Welcome into this Tuesday edition of Palmetto Sports Daily. It was a great weekend for Coastal Carolina, guys, especially the men on the court, because they finally got 11 wins, and that is already more wins than they had last season when they had 10 wins, and the season before they only had 9. So, they can only go up from here, it seems like. But the Chants beating Georgia Southern in overtime, and this was a little bit of revenge from the last time these two teams played this season. That game also going into overtime, and the Chants losing in that one by 1. But the final in this weekend's game, 79-75. Chants, again, their playmakers continue to be Rashid Jones, one of the only returners from last year. He led the team in points. And then also A.J. Dantzler and a couple of other transfers that have really helped them out this year. Joshua Beadle, of course, the former Clemson guy. So Coastal Carolina on a better path than they have been the last couple of years. Of course, they're still in the midst of Sun Belt play. They've still got less than a dozen games left at this point in this part of the season. They've also got a non-conference game with that MAC-SBC matchup that's been happening the last couple of years. But Coastal Carolina getting ready to take on Texas State on Thursday. And actually, we'll get to talk to head coach Justin Gray tomorrow, so we will hear from the coach later this week on Palmetto Sports Daily. Kevin, how about the Gamecocks this weekend?
Yeah, South Carolina not getting their doors blown off like they did against Arkansas earlier last week. They come away with a 4-point loss on the road against Auburn this past weekend. But Lamont Paris, at least seemingly, is a little bit impressed with how his team bounced back. And like I said, that game against Arkansas, just a debacle as they go on the road. They lose by 34 points to what was then the 17th ranked team in the country. So really anything had to be an improvement after that. And they did play much better in this game against Auburn. They were in this one right down to the end. Eventually, they end up falling 71-67. But like I said, Lamont Paris, after this game, talking about how he was impressed with how the team bounced back after that tough loss to Arkansas and how they stayed in it in this one against Auburn.
2 years ago, they had a great crowd, a great environment, and a good team, and we played well that day and won that game. Today, we didn't play well. We didn't play well enough. I thought there was one particular stretch in the second half where the lead was at 9 and it went to 20. It seemed like in a blink of an eye, and trying to get that settled down. That's kind of been a microcosm of what's happened to us in some instances, is that we have a stretch. It happened at Oklahoma where in the second half it was 6-point game with 6 left, and in a couple of minutes I look down and it's almost 20. And so we're continually trying to figure out what the decisions are and the plays, even if they're not decisions, just the physical plays that lead to those things happening. So we focus on us. Like, I don't think anybody really has the luxury of using the transitive property to their benefit to say, well, these guys did that against them, they did this against us, we ought to do this against them, right? So I don't even know who we play until somebody tells me. You're going to think that's crazy. You're going to think that's crazy. I don't know who we play until they tell me.
Well, I will tell you, Coach, you guys are back in action coming up later tonight at home when you take on Oklahoma. So right back to it for South Carolina. Meanwhile, Clemson, Caroline, keeps moving up those AP rankings.
Yeah, Kevin, they jumped the most out of anybody that was already in the AP poll, and the poll that came out on Monday, moving from number 22 to number 18. So they go up 4 spots after getting a couple big-time conference wins, a big one over Boston College over the weekend, and then winning by 10 against a Miami team that was also on an absolute roll. The Canes were riding a 10-game win streak coming into Little John Coliseum over the weekend. So a couple big wins for Clemson. They're actually up to 9 wins in a row right now. They start ACC conference play 6-0 for just the second time in program history. So quite the milestone there. This group playing really well when it needs to play really well. And part of what's working is who you're seeing on the screen right there. Clemson has 3 big guys in R.J. Godfrey, Nick Davidson, and Carter Welling, who are more than capable of going out and getting you 20 points, right? Maybe a couple of them scoring in double digits. That's something that's also been working really well for this group. Brad Brownell saying that that's why this team is playing well because they have a lot of different guys, and namely a different guy that can step up on any night, right? It's not just like one leading, reliable scorer, even though Coach was joking it would be kind of nice to have that, when you need points, you can go to this guy. But in their last 4 games, Carter Welling, the high scorer with 18, Nick Davidson, the high scorer with 25, Justin Porter getting in there game before that with 26, and then before that, it was RJ Godfrey who had 17. So Brad Brownell talking after that Miami win about this group really finding its identity, and the big guys not only being able to score the rock, but also not being shy about passing the ball and really getting this offense to a point where it feels like, all right, we know what we're doing, we're in a rhythm, this is what we're doing now. He expanded a little bit more on that after the win over Miami as well.
I do think some of it is just guys becoming more comfortable with what they're supposed to do and the reads they have, and then obviously just them making more plays. At the end of the day, it's finding out when you can break something off and go make a play. When does Coach want me to go attack? Because there's a fine line between what we're doing in terms of running our stuff and also then just going and making a play.
Well, I can't remember what the exact number is. I think it's 24 out of the last 26 games in ACC play going back to last season that Clemson has won. And we're talking about basketball. We're not talking about football. So Brad Brownell certainly having this group in a spot that they like right now, and that's really working for them. They welcome in NC State later tonight. If you're watching this for the first time around, it'll be a little bit of a preview. If you're watching with us later on in this evening, you'll probably already know what's going on in that game. We'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow. But interesting thing about that one, of course, another tough ACC conference opponent, but the head coach of NC State is Will Wade, who coached at McNeese last season. That high seed, I guess I should say, that upset Clemson in the NCAA tournament last year. But Brad Brownell on his radio show saying that it's not me and Will playing out there, it's Clemson and it's NC State, and that's all we're going to talk about. So, Kevin, your thoughts on that, and Clemson, welcoming the guy that knocked him out of the tournament in one of their most promising seasons that they've had in a long time last year.
Yeah, I liked how Brad Brownell really just kind of squashed that really quick, saying this isn't me against Will Wade,
Yeah.
This is us against them. And, it's hard to kind of have a rollover from last season and have all these guys too upset about it and, wanting to get revenge, because this is pretty much a completely new team. So not that many guys that were on this team last year and suffered that loss to Will Wade's team before he left for NC State. So I'm not really sure that revenge is going to be a big thing as they get ready for NC State. I'm sure the Tigers are much more interested in keeping this win streak going and keeping this perfect start in the ACC going as they take the court tonight at 7 o'clock against NC State. Wanted to mention real quick, pretty sure that was not the correct Lamont Paris shot we wanted to run in this one. I'm pretty sure that was from one point last season, but the fact still remains, Coach Paris, very impressed with how the way his team came out and battled with Auburn the entire day and kept it a close game throughout the night. But we did want to mention that was the wrong shot right there. We're going to have everything right tuned up when we come back from this break. Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We move over to the women's side on the basketball court, and South Carolina keeps rolling on, still the number 2 team in the country according to the AP poll, after picking up a couple of big wins last week, including that victory at home on Thursday night over the number 4 ranked team in the country, that being Texas. The Gamecocks win that one. They avenge their only loss of the season, coming to Texas early on this season back in November. Then they go on the road, played an HBCU on Sunday. Really cool move by Don Staley and the Gamecocks going up to Coppin State and coming away with an easy victory right there. But of course, the big news from last week was that win over Texas, hosting the Longhorns in Columbia, and like I said, getting revenge for their only loss of the season. Don Staley saying after this one that the team, with which she has always done a great job of making sure this team gels together and the team gets along well and, has great chemistry on and off the court. She said this year's team took a little bit longer than some of the teams have in the past, but she says at this point, as we get into the middle of January, we start to get ready for February, not too far off, this team is really starting to hit their stride.
This year versus last year was more of a team. We were able to, a core group of our players were together, so they really understood, the pecking order of how we want to, put people in positions to score. This team, it took a while for our defense to connect. But that's probably normal when you have, so many players playing out of the roles that they played previous to this particular season. But we do have a lot more people that can score the ball, even coming off the bench. So it's something that we really haven't played our best basketball yet, and I hope it's coming.
And it's interesting for Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks because they're still bringing players in at this point of the season. Just had the girl coming in from France a couple of weeks ago. So that chemistry is kind of evolving as the season goes on. And they've got another tough week ahead of them this week, as Thursday they take on Oklahoma. And then Sunday they play host to an undefeated Vanderbilt team that is ranked 5th in the country at this point, Caroline.
Yeah, that game on Sunday is going to be a big one because I believe both Vandy and South Carolina towards the top of the SEC standings right now, and I know that might not carry a lot of weight right now in January, but those games are big ones that you look back on in March when that time rolls around. So that'll be definitely one to tune into on Sunday. But going back to this past Sunday, Clemson women's basketball also picking up a big-time win and getting a little bit of revenge. Not that Clemson and Wake Forest, really have a lot of bad blood between each other or anything, but because one of Clemson's players that transferred in this year, Demira Hines, she actually played the first 4 years of her career at Wake Forest, and she led the team in rebounds in 2 of those 4 seasons and came to Clemson her first year with the Tigers here in her 5th year of college basketball. So the players are really talking about wanting to get this win for her, and we'll get to that in a second. But first I have to say that this team, Clemson, I should say, trailed for almost the entire game. They led for a grand total of 28 seconds in this game, guys. They come back, and guess who ends up sending it to overtime with a pair of free throws? Demira Hines against her former team. And then Clemson really turned it on in the extra period. They end up winning it 78-71. It's their 4th ACC win. They have 5 straight wins at home. But going back to Hines and just the story, the players saying that they made it about her the week leading up to the game. And this team wanted to come together and get a win for their teammate. And they talked about that quite a bit post-game and really got an emotional response out of head coach Sean Poppy as well when he was talking about his team's culture in doing something like that.
I mean, I just got teary-eyed a little bit with Rach is talking about because, we have made it about her this week to fight for her. And it's who I know they are, but what she just said is not just telling you to the media. It's who they are as people, and they really wanted to fight and find a way for D. So then for her to put the exclamation point, really, to get us into overtime, I felt like at that point, like we're going to win, and maybe not have felt that way the first 40 minutes, but that was kind of it's somehow we found a way to 5 minutes, and now we're going to have an opportunity to finish it.
Just a big kind of character win for Clemson there as they work towards getting what they want to happen on the court. Head coach Sean Poppy talks about being able to see it all the time with this group and see the strides that they're making. They saw a little bit of that in a gritty comeback win on Sunday. Rachel Rose goes for 20 points. She hit 4 of 5 of her threes. They were really able to score from downtown. That was working out well for them, so they carry a little bit of momentum into their road trip when they got a tough one on Thursday coming up against Virginia Tech. But no, they weren't the only ones in action this weekend. Teagan, what's going on with Coastal?
Yeah, CCU women's basketball at home this weekend taking on South Alabama, and they got their 2nd Sun Belt win of the year. I've talked a lot on this show about this group trying to find their sort of chemistry and trying to figure out how to gel together, just like the Gamecocks have been doing. And it's kind of been tough for the Chaunts because it seems like they get an injured player, and then as soon as that injured player is back, they have another injured player. So they're just going through a lot of, having to balance a lot of roles, taking on a lot of different roles. But Coastal beating South Alabama 63-59 this weekend. Kinsey Grimes, the star freshman, was out. She was one of the injuries that they had to deal with this weekend. But Tessa Grady leading the team with 15 points. And then also another player that had a big game here, maybe not necessarily with how many points she scored, in this one individually, but Kristen Williams, the UMass transfer who got here last year, she decided to stay with Coastal this season. She scored her 1,000th career point. Kevin Pedersen right there, the head coach that you just saw, he talked after the game about how much Williams has done for Coastal these last few seasons and how they just really wanted her to reach that 1,000th point in this game here. So she got that with a made free throw toward the end of the game. It wasn't the fastest game in the world for either team. The first half was extremely slow, extremely low scoring. Both teams scored more points in the third quarter than they did in the entire first half. But Coastal Carolina getting a big win. They're going to take on the Raging Cajuns on the 21st. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. So we'll have an update on that one. But for right now, we're going to take a break here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily on this fine Tuesday. Guys, as we know, the college football transfer portal window closed on Friday, the 16th, just a couple days ago, but that does not mean that there's not a ton of action and still a ton of drama going on all over the place. And we wanted to talk about a situation specifically happening at Clemson, maybe some rumors, hard to pick out what's true and what's not at this point in time, about transfer linebacker from Cal, reigning ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year, Luke Farrelly, who reportedly, by all signs pointed to him being a member of the Tigers team. He reportedly has been on campus, was enrolled as a Clemson student, participating in team activities, all the things. And then there are a lot of rumors floating around over the weekend that he re-entered the transfer portal. So what we do know, based on a conversation that I had with someone from Clemson Athletics yesterday, is that Farrelly's status has not changed. He is listed on the website on Clemson's 2026 online football roster, despite all of these other rumors that are going on, saying that a lot of outlets saying that he might land with Ole Miss. Some people throwing around the word tampering, since he was already clearly getting integrated at Clemson, and people saying he re-entered the portal. It does not appear on Clemson Athletics side of things. They told me they have not been notified of any formal changes. That said, there is an administrative window as part of the transfer portal where if guys put their names in by Friday, the school has 2 business days to go ahead and formally enter them in the portal. So maybe that happened and we just don't know yet. Maybe that's something we'll find out tomorrow. There are a lot of different things floating around. Clemson Athletics says his status hasn't changed. A lot of people online saying that it has and that he is likely going to go to Ole Miss. So a lot going on. Clemson might have their 9th defensive player come play for them. They might not. We don't know. Teagan, your thoughts on the Luke Farrelly saga and what you think is really going on here? It's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I feel like it seems like we get a new thing every single day of where he's going to end up. And I feel like there have been a couple of stories like that this season with this transfer portal. Another with an Ole Miss connection. South Carolina tight end Michael Smith was supposed to go to Syracuse. He was committed there. He was a star from the 2024 class, and then he reportedly, tried to sign up for South Carolina classes. However, now he's ending up at Ole Miss as well. Maybe. Where's Luke Farrelly going? Theoretically Clemson right now, but they've also got the Ole Miss connection there. Same with Michael Smith. So just a lot of confusing stuff going on right now, Kevin.
Yeah, and that timeline is a little bit sketchy, too, because if they have 2 days to put a guy in the portal, then 2 business days, like you said, Caroline, that wouldn't be till tomorrow because the weekend, and then obviously we have the holiday on Monday. So today would be that first business day, and tomorrow on Wednesday would actually be the deadline if that timeline turns out to be correct, and that's when he did put his name in on Friday. Just a lot of question marks. I mean, the biggest thing is if he signed anything with Clemson. If he signed a paper, if he signed what is essentially a contract, then Clemson has reason to not put his name into that portal. He's got to live up to that contract, and then that's when you can start with the tampering stuff and going down the road. But if he hadn't signed anything and he got to the Clemson campus and he just says, I'm not feeling this and I want to put my name back in, then that's up to him, and he's got the right to do that. So I'm curious to see how this works out over the next couple of days. We've still got more here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily, where the college football season officially coming to an end last night as Indiana completing one of the greatest seasons in the history of the sport, going 16-0 with a 27-21 win over Miami. The question now, guys, is was this bad for the sport going forward? Which I think it might be, because now it seems like there is no excuse for any team in a Power 4 conference to say we need time to turn this around and we got to bring in the right guys and blah, blah, blah. This shows that anyone can turn this around at any time if you just want to put the money towards it. So essentially, we are in an arms race going forward for who is going to win the national championship and who's going to be a contender just to get to the playoffs going forward, Teagan.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to the whole so many coaches getting fired this season because their ADs and their universities said, this guy wasn't able to do it in 1, 2, 3 years. That's it. We're moving on. We need a Kurt Signetti.
Yeah, but guys, on the flip side of that, it could be a good thing because it gives all these other programs hope, right? If like, hey, college football's not dead. This is where we could get to. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're making moves in the portal, because we're trying to obtain something that Indiana went out and achieved, which is the impossible. Just 3 total bowl wins in school history before this season. Just insane. So I think it could be a good thing. Maybe it's a revival. I don't know. Kevin?
It could be if you have a school that's ready to put the money up for it right away. And, you know, today every school is calling pretty much every major donor they have and saying, hey, you want us to be the next Indiana? It's time to write a check. We're wrapping up here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.